Trump transition. Top contenders talk with the president-elect at Trump Tower. Who's in and who's out? Praise for Vice President-elect Mike Pence from congressional leaders behind closed doors today at the Capitol. Strong words from Pope Francis about children in Syria, what the Holy Father is saying about hundreds of thousands of innocent children. And birth control, why the left is panicking over a Trump administration. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, November 17th, 2016.
Rebuild our military, revive our economy, and in a word, make America great.
Mike Pence promotes Donald Trump's agenda in Washington, D.C., while the president-elect hosts dignitaries at Trump Tower in New York. Good evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Several key political players going through the revolving doors at Trump Tower, including former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Their conversation is said to have touched on China, Russia, Iran, and the European Union. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also sat down with Trump today. In Washington, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Tennessee Republican Bob Corker, met today with Vice President-elect Mike Pence. Corker shared that his staff is helping the Trump presidential transition teams, specifically those working at the State Department.
We have personnel that we have loaned to them. You know, they do these landing teams that go in and look at where agencies are, and in our case, obviously, it's the State Department and others, and so we've lent some personnel to them.
In New York, VIPs continue to arrive at Trump transition headquarters. Among them, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who is rumored to be a strong contender for Secretary of State. On Monday, he laid out his foreign policy vision at the Wall Street Journal CEO Council, prioritizing the fight against terrorism. Representative Chris Collins says Giuliani would be a great member of Trump's team.
With everything that Rudy Giuliani has done in his life, in his contacts and what we know of Rudy Giuliani, he would be a fabulous cabinet-level official.
South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley also met with Trump today. She has been mentioned as a candidate for Secretary of State. Before the election, Haley said she was not a fan of Trump, but now the two appear to be moving past their rocky start. Donald Trump may wait until Thanksgiving to begin announcing his team. Senior advisor Kellyanne Conway says Trump is enjoying the selection process.
He's just loving this role in transition. He's a transactional guy. He's his success. He's somebody who's used to delivering results and producing. And so at his desk every day, taking the counsel of many different people, taking many different phone calls, going through paperwork and discussing forming his cabinet and rounding out his senior staff. And he's really enjoying it.
The head of national intelligence becomes the first person to resign from the Obama administration during the transition. James Clapper submitted his resignation last night. He'll remain the director of national intelligence until the end of Obama's term. All outgoing members must submit their resignation at some point before Trump takes office. Vice President-elect Mike Pence prays with House Republicans today and talks about religious freedom. Capitol Hill reporter Jason Calvi is here with more. What else did they talk about?
Lauren, tax reform, repealing and replacing Obamacare, border security. He also eased the tensions and the concerns that the Trump transition team is in chaos. But first up today, an act of faith.
Vice President-elect Mike Pence asked House Republicans for prayer today. So Georgia Representative Doug Collins stepped up. What did you pray today?
We pray for peace, we pray for patience and wisdom for not only Mike Pence, but Donald Trump as well. Our country needs wisdom, and we need the mercy and the grace to carry out that wisdom. So that's what we prayed for. We pray for just clear heads. And I think in this country right now, we're asking that for everyone.
Behind these closed doors, we're told Pence talked about religious freedom.
Just pulling back the executive orders that President Obama has done that are unconstitutional. And these kinds of infringements on religious liberty are at the heart of some of the angst that people have. It's, you can't just by edict change the course of our Constitution.
It was electrifying.
Tennessee Representative Diane Black brought up the pro-life cause.
We have seen that over and over again in what's been put out by the president-elect's emails and so on, that he is very interested in dealing with this issue very early on. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Vice President-elect Mike Pence for being a part of that and having a voice for what we know are the most innocent.
One of Trump's campaign promises was to defund Planned Parenthood as long as they do abortions. Speaker Ryan was asked about that after the Pence and GOP meeting.
We put a bill on President Obama's desk in reconciliation. Our position has not changed.
Today, the vice president-elect met those who voted against that bill, House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, and then incoming Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
Late this afternoon, we now know that Nancy Pelosi will face a challenger in her race to be the Democratic minority leader here at the U.S. House. Ohio Representative Tim Ryan is putting his hat into the race with very strong language. He came out swinging, saying the current leadership of the Democrats has given them the smallest minority here at the U.S. House, Lauren, since 1929.
Well, what are his chances that he's going to be able to defeat Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy Pelosi today during her weekly press conference said that she has the support of 2/3 of the Democrats, so she's pretty much already claiming victory for the leadership race, which the election will now be November 30th. It was originally scheduled for today, but some Democrats pushed to have it postponed in the wake of the stunning losses last week. Lauren?
Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much, Jason. An emotional Hillary Clinton says there have been times this week when she's never wanted to leave her house again. She spoke for the first time since her concession at the Children's Defense Fund's gala in Washington, D.C. She urged her supporters to continue to fight for what they believe.
I urge you, please, don't lose heart. Don't give up on the values we share. Look at the young people we are honoring tonight. If they can persevere, so must all of us.
Secretary Clinton started her career as an intern at the Children's Defense Fund. The organization advocates for children. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. President Obama is in Germany today in the middle of his last trip abroad as president. In his remarks alongside German Chancellor Angela Merkel, he issued a warning to President-elect Trump on how he should deal with Russia.
I don't expect that the president-elect will follow exactly our blueprint or our approach. But my hope is that he does not simply take a realpolitik approach and suggest that, if we just cut some deals with Russia, even if it hurts people.
He also addressed protesters who have demonstrated against the incoming administration, saying that he, quote, wouldn't advise them to be silent. In anticipation of a Trump presidency, thousands of people are fleeing their impoverished homes in Central America for the United States. Many visit a Texas shelter run by a nun. It opened its doors during an immigration surge 2 years ago, and Sister Norma Pimentel says she's helping out because of the growing violence south of the border.
The violence, instead of diminishing, it's escalated, and so we have families that fear for their lives, especially of their kids.
One mayor along the U.S.-Mexico border said it's not just violence and poverty that's driving people to migrate. Some immigrants say they face an uncertain future with the promises made by the president-elect Trump to secure the border with a wall. And Pope Francis prays for the hundreds of children affected by the violence in Syria. The Holy Father's plea came as he met with the leader of the Assyrian Church of the East. The two spoke about the suffering of Christians in the Middle East, including many children. The leaders also mentioned the important relations between Catholics and the Assyrian Church of the East, which is one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. This Saturday, the Holy Father will create 17 new cardinals, often referred to as the princes of the church. Some come from outer edges of the world like Bangladesh, but it's the first time Francis has elevated Americans to the College of Cardinals. Joining us now from Rome is John Allen, Vatican expert and editor of the online news site Crux, which covers all things Catholic and features content from our partner, Catholic News Agency. John, welcome to the program. There are 3 Americans in the new class of cardinals: Archbishop Cupich of Chicago, former Dallas Bishop Kevin Farrell, and Archbishop Tobin, formerly of Indianapolis. And he's now moving to Newark, New Jersey. What do you make of these picks?
Well, Lauren, I think it is obvious that Pope Francis is, in some sense, trying to shift the balance of power in the American Bishops' Conference, in the American hierarchy. All 3 of the men you just mentioned, that is Cupich of Chicago, Tobin, now of Newark, formerly of Indianapolis, and also Kevin Farrell, formerly of Dallas, who is now running his new office for family, laity, and life. All of them would be seen as very pastoral figures, and to use political terms, they would all be seen as somewhat center-left, that is, moderate to progressive. And that, of course, is very much in keeping with Pope Francis's own agenda for the Church. And so in this sense, and let's remember, this is Pope Francis's 3rd consistory, but in the first 2, there were no American cardinals. So this is the first time he is raising up new American princes of the Church. And this is very much this Pope putting his own stamp on the American episcopacy, and in particular, the American cardinals.
2 main duties of a cardinal are to elect a pope and then to advise him. What do you think Pope Francis is specifically looking for in a cardinal, not just American, but also around the world?
Well, Lauren, you know, traditionally, cardinals have been not only the most senior advisors of the Pope, but they have been, in effect, kind of semi-regal figures in the Church. They have been the princes of the Church. I think Francis has a slightly different conception of a cardinal's role. I think what he wants fundamentally is a pastor, that is, someone who, in his own language, carries the smell of the sheep because he is close to the ordinary people he's called to serve. And if you look around at this particular crop of 17 new cardinals, it is very clear that pastors is what Francis went shopping for. I mean, we've got new cardinals from Bangladesh, from Mauritius, from Papua New Guinea, from the Central African Republic. People, because of the circumstances and the poverty and the desperation of those places, are forced to be close to ordinary people. Beyond that, I think he wants them to be the voices of the local churches around the world. Remember that one of Pope Francis's first moves was to create, in effect, a kind of kitchen cabinet, that is, a council of cardinal advisors from around the world who form his most important sounding board. There isn't a single important governance decision that this Pope makes that he doesn't discuss with that group first. So you wrap all that up together, that is, a pastor, a voice of a local church, and the sounding board for the Pope. I think that's his conception of what he wants out of a cardinal. And I think he would tell you those are the kind of men he's found in this consistory.
John Allen, editor of the online news site cruxnow.com. Thanks so much for joining us.
Lauren, it was a great pleasure.
The Archdiocese of New York and the Diocese of Peoria, Illinois, have been locked in a battle for the remains of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Now, the New York Supreme Court has ordered the Archdiocese of New York to allow Sheen's remains to be moved to his home diocese. Sheen, who's known for his dynamic preaching on TV in the 50s, is buried in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. The Diocese of Peoria is spearheading Sheen's cause for sainthood. Coming up, the latest in the House leadership races. We'll break down what a new administration will have to do to work with Capitol Hill. And Megyn Kelly opens up about her feud with President-elect Donald Trump. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. In a new book, Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly is dishing about her rocky relationship with Donald Trump and her need for security during a trip to Disney. Tensions started during the first Republican debate where she asked Trump about his history of calling women pigs and dogs.
I think hopefully with respect to some of his dicier rhetoric, he will be lifted up by the office. And I'm hoping that the power of it and, just the majesty of it, if you will appeal to his better angels.
Kelly says she made peace with Trump when the two held an off-the-record meeting in May. And the new Trump administration is reaching out its hand to Capitol Hill. It's laying the groundwork for a working relationship with senators and representatives on both sides. Joining us now is Scott Wong, congressional reporter for The Hill. Welcome to the program, Scott. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. Watching this leadership shift is really fascinating. It looks like the vote, as we heard Jason Calvi say earlier, for Nancy Pelosi has been postponed until next week. And today, Representative Tim Ryan, as you were one of the first to tweet out, is going to challenge her. So does this mean that there could be a Speaker Ryan and a Tim Ryan, Ryan versus Ryan on Capitol Hill?
A lot of reporters and people watching politics are making that same joke.
I'm not unique. Thanks a lot, Scott. Okay.
It still seems like a long shot. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is a prolific fundraiser. She's extremely powerful. That's why so few people have taken that step to challenge her in the past. She has incredible support. She's very popular. She's obviously made history as the first female Speaker of the House. But that being said, there's a desire coming from some of the younger members who are saying we can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Look at what's happened these past few cycles. We haven't recaptured the majority. And so there's a lot of soul searching going on right now in the Democratic Party.
Well, explain about Tim Ryan. Is he more Bernie Sanders or is he more Hillary Clinton?
I think coming off the recent election where you saw a lot of the Rust Belt states go to Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton, Democrats are saying, how can we recapture some of those white, middle class, working class voters that had solidly been in the Democratic camp in the past? And so Tim Ryan is a guy who comes from Ohio. He's not a Bernie Sanders liberal. He's coming from Ohio, working class background, and so. That is he's making that contrast with Nancy Pelosi, who is seen as
more
a San Francisco
and also San Francisco liberal and very state of Washington.
Exactly.
Also, this is also an insider versus outsider. Let's go to Paul Ryan, the other Ryan.
Right.
And I was struck on the campaign trail how he would not campaign for Donald Trump. And now he was elected unanimously to be the Speaker of the House.
Right.
But isn't there going to be tension there?
I think there will be some tension. Right now, everyone's in the honeymoon phase. Everyone's on the same page. Mike Pence was on Capitol Hill today and was just warmly received by his old colleagues from the House of Representatives. But I think when the rubber meets the road, when some of these legislative plans start taking shape and we start seeing the details, I think there will be some real differences between the Trump administration and the Trump White House and congressional Republicans.
And Speaker Ryan being among them, I would think. And who do you think is going to be driving the agenda on Capitol Hill? Is it going to be the White House or is it going to be Paul Ryan?
Right now, they are deferring to Donald Trump. He has enormous capital coming off that stunning election. Speaker Ryan has credited him for saying we basically you carried us through
this for us,
in
right?
The Senate and the House, and so right now they're giving Donald Trump a little bit of leeway, room to run with things for a while. But when these details start coming out on Obamacare replacement and infrastructure and all of these legislative items that we're anticipating, I think we're going to see some real differences.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Scott Wong, congressional reporter with The Hill.
Thank you.
Up next, the Holy Father celebrates Mass on the feast day of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. The Pope's message to the faithful. Plus, will access to birth control change during a Trump administration? Today we celebrate the feast day of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. She's the patron saint of hospitals, brides, homeless people, and dying children. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. On this feast of St. Elizabeth, Pope Francis highlights God's love for his people during Mass this morning. The Holy Father focused on the story in the Gospel according to Mark. When our Lord wept over the sins of Jerusalem, Francis asked the faithful to examine our conscience and to listen to Christ's words. One of President-elect Donald Trump's big promises on the campaign trail was repealing the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. It forces insurers to provide coverage for birth control and abortion-inducing drugs. Our network is currently fighting that mandate in court. Since the election, there have been great stories of concern about women who might lose access to birth control. Joining us now is Mary Rice Hassan, a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and author of a recent article in The Federalist. It's called Feminists as Orchestrated. Well, it's about feminists, and you describe that reaction that feminists are orchestrated hysteria. What do you mean by that?
Here's the thing. With the Affordable Care Act, women's access to birth control is not going away, even if the Affordable Care Act is repealed. But what the left and feminists want to convince women is that somehow we're going back to the dark ages and they will no longer be able to find their birth control.
And why are they doing that? Why do you think they're doing that?
So two things to know. One, women will still have access. The only difference is who's going to pay for it. And so women who choose that option, who want to use birth control, have to pay for it, just as they did before the Affordable Care Act, when most insurance companies covered it anyway. So what's in it for the feminists?
Right. Why are they doing this?
Yeah,
exactly.
I think two reasons. One, because it makes them relevant. Okay, you create a pretend panic, then they can ride in and be the champions, the heroes who say, don't worry, we'll protect your access, we'll make sure you have your birth control. And so that's a part of it, because there's a financial incentive for the left, for the feminist organizations in particular.
And what would that be, the financial
They're providing many forms of these birth control devices.
Sure.
And in particular, what they did here was try to convince women that because there was this panic, they needed to go out and get
it right away, now,
and get an IUD.
I see it now, right.
Because the thing with the IUD is that is now covered under the Affordable Care Act, and that's expensive.
I see. So, women are a diverse group with diverse needs, as we all are, we know that, and many different perspectives. I was struck by the fact that many pro-choice women voted for Donald Trump. And so why do you think, what does he need to do to thread that needle? What does he need to do to maintain the support of women overall?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Women voted not because they were worried about birth control. They were worried about the same big issues that every other citizen is: the economy, jobs, terrorism, national security, immigration, things like that. So what Donald Trump has to do is deliver.
Deliver on that.
He needs to keep his promises on those big things that matter to people in terms of how they live.
Why do you think there is such a deep divide between feminists and American women? What is that about?
I think they're just out of touch, because they have staked everything on selling women the big lie, that women's freedom and equality and happiness depends on birth control with abortion as a backup. And yet women are waking up to the problems with abortion, the fact that it doesn't bring women happiness. And the same thing with birth control. We're seeing women for health reasons say, this is not a good thing for me. So there's a real question for feminists of how do they keep their voice, how do they keep their influence when American women are not buying it increasingly.
Okay, thank you so much. Mary Rice Hassan, a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Thanks for joining us. Well, that does it for us this evening. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow me at Lauren Ashburn or at EWTN. Good night, and God bless you.